going on, guys? Welcome back to Trench Talk. I am your host, Christian Royston, joined by my co-host, Logan Shanks. Got a action-packed week. It seems like every week is action-packed at this point.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks in to the NFL season, and I mean, I don't know if we were ready to overreact last week, but I'm so ready to overreact this week.
Yeah, you've already been telling me some of your takes, and some I agree with, some I don't. But I think we could start real quick with just the overarching news from last Thursday night's game.
Yeah, Tua Tagovailoa, he took another hit to the head. Um, at this point, it seems like it's almost a guarantee that he's going to get a concussion like once every 4 games, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
I think at some point, I know everybody's been talking like, how many is too many? He should retire. What's your take on all this? Do you think he should be done after this one?
Well, most recently, so he was put on injured reserve,
Mm-hmm.
which was, probably it was the good move, and people probably saw that coming. But this kind of leaves the Dolphins in a little tricky situation. They did sign Tyler Huntley, but in terms of Tua retiring, I think it's obviously a big health concern, and it makes you wonder what happens if he takes another. What is this? Probably his third or fourth concussion.
Yeah, I think at least fourth in the last
It
two
has to make
years.
it has to make you worried for what happens if he takes another hit like that and you can't get back up, or it's permanent damage, whatever. I'm in no position to tell someone what to do when it's something they've been working for their whole life. It's like telling you got to think about that kid inside of them that had this dream, and you don't want to tell someone to give that up, but he's got his money. I'm not in his place, but it'd be hard for me to imagine that he plays for another 10 years.
Yeah, it's very doable that he can. I think it would have to come down to what the neurologist says,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously, some people can take more hits to the head than others. It seems like Tua might be one where he's more likely to get a concussion, so the re-injury risk is there. But I know people that have had twice as many concussions as Tua has, and they're just fine. So it'll really come down to like if he wants to risk it or not. If he plays safe, he probably can play for a while, because it really does seem like when he tries to risk it, that's when he gets hurt. He didn't have to run the ball there.
Mm-hmm.
Could have just thrown it away. They could have taken 3 points, But, he dives headfirst into DeMar Hamlin. Crazy that DeMar Hamlin's on the field and Tua's down.
Yeah. Even before that, this is something a lot of people were talking about, how before the injury, well, that's like the overarching thing of that Thursday night game. But before that, it was not a good game, not just for Tua, but the Dolphins in general.
Yeah, they were struggling. They couldn't find. He just couldn't find his receivers at all.
Yeah,
you got to get Tyreek going.
He had 3 interceptions. Yeah, you couldn't get Tyreek going. And, a lot of people, I think I want to categorize some sports analysts really as non-ball knowers, because they'll be like, oh, well, the first interception, that wasn't his fault. Okay, so you mean because they say it's not his fault because it bounced off his receiver's shoulder and it got tipped into a guy's hand. I'm like, well, that technically is his fault because the ball's late and or not in where it's supposed to be. So
it did hit him right in the chest.
No, it hit his shoulder pad.
Yeah, well, that's also that might be a rookie receiver. It was a receiver that's new to the team. You should know to turn. He should have been turned already. It hit him right where it needs to hit him. He just wasn't paying attention.
Then he has the second interception was a misread miscommunication between him and Robbie Chosen. He just overthrows him, which if Robbie Chosen's your wide receiver 3, that's kind of crazy.
This guy's a poet.
What?
You said you're a poet. Robbie Chosen, then he overthrows him.
Oh, that was, I didn't even plan that. And then the third one, he had a Will Levis throw where he's trying to throw it out of bounds and it just goes right into the Bills defender.
Yeah, those last 2 are rough.
And
Robbie Chosen was having kind of a rough game too.
but I think Josh Allen in that game, if you didn't believe it in the first game against the Cardinals, he's making his case for maybe this is his year for the MVP.
I could see it. I think there's a few people that are ahead of him at this point,
Like Baker.
like Baker. It's kind of crazy that, I mean, yeah, we're 2 weeks in, but the MVP race right now is between Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold.
All right. Well, maybe not Sam Darnold, but
I mean, he's has the most quality wins
it's true.
because he did beat the 49ers.
So Josh Allen has 5 total touchdowns, has a pass rating of 124 through 2 games, and 0 turnovers. So
how many yards?
371, 8.8 right? yards per attempt. Oh, I'm sorry.
Brock Purdy's leading the league in passing yards.
We'll get to him. I have my, Purdy might be in trouble. We can actually talk more. I mean, so overall, just on that game, Dolphins are in a murky spot. They signed Snoop Huntley, apparently. I always forget that is his nickname.
Snoop.
So
Pro Bowler.
It's going to be between him and Skylar Thompson for who's playing on Sunday for them.
I think from what we've seen of Skylar Thompson already, I would be very surprised if he takes another snap.
And we got to watch a little bit of him when he was at Kansas State, and I remember thinking, I'm like, okay, well, this guy's he's a good quarterback in the Big 12, but NFL quarterback, I don't know about that.
No.
And then the Bills, they just keep rolling. James Cook had a breakout game. I want to say 3 touchdowns. So
yep, he's on my best performances.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, three touchdowns. He was really like the main thing that was going right. I mean,
yeah,
they haven't. It seems like everybody's talking about the receiving threats on Buffalo, and it's like, Dalton Kincaid is rarely getting looked at. It looks like Khalil Shakir is the number 1 guy, but he's, maybe catching like 4 balls a game. But I mean, Josh Allen just kept looking at James Cook, and James Cook would just get it in the end zone.
Wish they would have told me that, because I think I took Dalton Kincaid over receptions and Keon Coleman over receiving yards. I just needed 40 receiving yards from Keon Coleman, but apparently James Cook.
Yeah, I don't think Keon Coleman is the guy there. They just haven't included him in their game plan, which is weird since wasn't he their first draft pick this last year?
Yes, they first pick of the second round. Am I right, or was he the last pick of the first round?
Something like that.
I'll double check that.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody thought he was going to be good. They were questioning if he was going to be the number 1 option there, and it really hasn't. It seems like he might be the number 3. Maybe number 4 option there. I mean, he's not getting looked at.
Because Matt Collins is there now, right? And he's been doing pretty well.
Yeah,
he was the first pick.
Curtis Samuel.
First pick of the second round.
Okay.
But that's all I got to say about this game. Terrible situation with Tua. You hope. Well, do you think he plays again this year?
I do. I mean, I think he wants to play. I think it'll come down to what he wants to do, because I mean, McDaniel obviously loves Tua, and I mean, he's gonna respect his decision. If Tua wants to retire, he'll retire. If he wants to play a game, he'll work him back into the game plan, and he'll make sure that he's healthy to play. But I mean, he should be good to go here in a couple weeks. Right. I think they're keeping him on IR just to make sure that he's fully healthy, but when it really comes down to is like whether he wants to play or not. And
I think he plays again this year, but this could be the start of another kind of wonky season for the Dolphins where, let's say Tua's out for 2 weeks. You go 2-3 in those next 5 games, or, he's out for 5 weeks. You go 2-3. You're already kind of playing back in the division because you lost to Buffalo already. is this another year where maybe the Dolphins miss the playoffs or they make it and they get bounced in the first round because they're just not ready yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they could squeak in, but I mean, you really I don't think they have a team that's built to make a push from the wild card. So they would almost want to just win the division outright, which at this point with the Bills there and with the Jets, actually looking good, I mean, it's going to be tough for them to even have a shot at the playoffs, let alone the top of the division.
Yeah, and I mean, sticking on the path of injuries, couple games here with a few teams that I've just kind of the injury bug has hit them early on in the season, and it's gonna affect them. Mainly, I wanted to talk about the 49ers against the Vikings, where the 49ers, they lose. I mean, Nick Bosa was down for a little bit. George Kittle was, I don't think he finished the game. We recently found out that, obviously the Christian McCaffrey situation, Deebo Samuel's is he on IR? Is he just out for a couple weeks?
I think they I want to say they placed him on IR, but I'm not sure. If he'll be out a couple weeks at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think this is really where our boy Brock Purdy is going to have to show that he deserves that contract extension with all his weapons out for the next few weeks. Yeah, I'm not sure about Kittle, obviously, but I mean, losing Deebo is huge.
Yeah. I mean, plus Brandon Ayuk is honestly not playing great. So, I mean, all these, Brock Purdy's throwing to Jawan Jennings and having Jordan Mason run the ball. I mean, where are all the haters now? I mean, if he wins games with this, I mean, there's really nothing you can say.
Right.
But I guess only time will tell. I mean, the Vikings had a really solid win over them. I mean, they looked like the better team all day. The Vikings pass rush, honestly, their defenses looked incredible this season. They were getting back to Purdy. They were forcing a lot of pressure, forcing bad throws, and then the defensive backs were coming in clutch too when they needed to.
Yeah, and they were creating pressure. And have you seen the clip where Brock Purdy goes up to Brian Flores and says, "Bro, I think he said your scheme is." That sounds like a total Brock thing.
Yeah, you cut out there, but I assume you're talking about when he was talking to the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, Brian Flores.
Yeah, I mean, their defense has just been it's looked really solid, and I think we were overreacting at week 1 by how they just manhandled Daniel Jones, but I don't think we're overreacting now. I mean, I think they're legit.
No, yeah, I think they're legit as well. Like you said, creating a lot of pressure from Purdy, who I want to say lost a fumble and threw an interception. So,
yeah, I know he threw. I guess I can look it up. I wasn't sure how many picks he threw, but I mean, yeah, this defense is forcing turnovers. It's forcing sacks. One pick. And then along with that, I mean, Sam Darnold's been playing his mind.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly saw this coming out of nowhere. I thought when they had to start Sam Darnold that, they were probably going to be like, walking around that like 7-10, 8-9 territory, but already off to a 2-0 start. I mean, and they beat the Niners, which again, they're kind of going through their injuries and whatnot, but I think they're playing really solid through these first few weeks, and who knows where they can really go now.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you speak of injury bugs. I think Justin Jefferson was
that too
hurt that game. I'm not sure what his status is currently.
I heard him say, he was talking to reporters, he's fine, like he'll be all right, which of course that's word of mouth from him. But quick word on Deebo Samuel. Ian Rappaport did tweet out that Shanahan told reporters wide receiver Deebo Samuel has a calf strain and will miss a few weeks. So
yeah,
it's probably 2-3 weeks for him. And Adam Schefter tweeted out yesterday that Jefferson participated in today's walkthrough despite his quad injury. looks as if he is on track to play Sunday versus Texans. So
Yeah,
looks like
that's good news.
just couldn't really finish the game. And when the defense was kind of dominating like that, it's kind and it's kind of nice that they don't have to rely on Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
And
Although he had that one, was it like 99 yards?
93, I believe.
Yeah, I remember seeing that ball come out, and I was like, "There's no way."
Mm-hmm.
And then he cuts back across the field into the end zone. I mean, who would have thought that the Sam Darnold Justin Jefferson connection was going to be?
I know it
history.
almost kind of looks like he was when he was tracking the ball that he was gonna not that he was gonna lose it, but I didn't really know if he was gonna be able to find out where it was gonna be at.
Yeah, I mean, that's Justin Jefferson for you.
Mm-hmm. But who knew that's what Sam Darnold needed was to go. I mean, I kind of feel bad for doubting him. He was kind of just like Baker, who needed stability, really, as a quarterback.
Yeah, and I had him on my best performances list as well,
Mm-hmm.
just because, I mean, almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, defeating probably one of the front runners for the Super Bowl this
Mm-hmm.
coming year. So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much more to say on this game other than it's just a game where we saw a lot of injuries. I believe at one point I was watching and it was Nick Bosa and Justin Jefferson down at
oh
the
yeah,
same
on the same
time,
play.
and I think Nick Bosa's fine, but that's and I think the Vikings can get even scarier when they have because did Jordan Addison even play that? He was playing that game, right?
He's also hurt.
Yeah, Jordan and TJ Hawkinson's going to be coming back soon.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we're talking about the Vikings at 2-0. I mean, they're still waiting for key players to return from injury.
Yeah. So, way to go, Sam Darnold. But moving on to our next game, which saw a lot of injuries, at least from one side, which made this game pretty lopsided, as determined by the final score. Cardinals beat the injured Rams 41-10. They jump out. I mean, you have another best performance here.
I do. I mean, Marvin Harrison. I mean, we were waiting to see when he would come alive, and then was it like the first pass or something? It was super early in the game. He took pass in the end zone, and then like the next drive had a super long touchdown. I mean,
yeah,
he's here. Marvin Harrison has arrived.
I think he finished the game with over 130 yards receiving and a couple touchdowns with a lot. I think he didn't catch a ball in the second half, or it might even been after the first quarter. But golly, I mean, he was he was going off. Him and Kyler had that connection, and the Cardinals defense didn't really have to do much in this one when the Rams came in without Puka Nacua, and then Cooper Kupp goes down. I believe he's also going on IR. So
yeah, I mean, as it sits, they have 12 people on IR.
Oh my goodness.
So I mean, the Rams are just in shambles. They lost. They already had Puka on IR. Right? Cooper Kupp is going to go on IR.
It's whoa. Let me stop you there. Mm-hmm. After a quick Google search, he is not going to go on IR for now. So,
well, then they say yesterday that they weren't sure if he's going to go on IR.
Yeah, but most reports are Sean McVay explaining why he's not going on IR.
Because he'll be out 3 weeks.
It's a minimum of 4 weeks, isn't it, on IR, or is it 3 weeks?
Yeah, 4 weeks. So if they get him healthy in 3, it's worth to not put him on.
Which is,
he'll still be out at least 2 weeks, I bet.
Yeah, I think that's just the Rams praying to have him back, and hopefully they can turn. I mean, I know it's only 2 weeks, but you got to think without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, how good can this team really be? I mean, the run game also looked terrible against the Cardinals.
Plus, they lost Jonah Jackson, one of their guards.
Yep.
I mean,
I remember texting you. I was just like, poor Stafford, man. Like, because he's actually playing pretty decent for his age and whatnot, and he's throwing to DeMarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell. I mean, not a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, there are talented players back there. I think this is a good chance for him to get some of the younger players involved too, just because I was watching their preseason, and I mean one name that stood out. Gosh, I need to bring the depth chart back up. I think it was Jordan Whittington. He was one that I saw in preseason and I thought looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see like who he goes to going forward. I mean, I think we're all expecting Robinson and Tutu Atwell to take a lot of the catches just because they've been involved in the game plan before.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I mean, with no clear number one, it's like, what is Stafford going to do?
Right. And so let me look at their schedule for the next couple games. I believe I just saw it doesn't get much easier for them. I guess a little bit of an injury bowl because they'll play the Niners this week, and then they'll play the Bears, and then they'll play the Packers, and then the Raiders. So, these next 4 weeks, your best hope is maybe 3-1. You probably drop that game to the Niners, start 0-3, but I think games against the Bears, the Packers, maybe depending on Jordan Love's situation, which will probably be back by then, and then the Raiders, you could easily drop 2 of those games though. So
I mean,
they might start out 1-5.
Yeah, and at that point, I really don't see a path to the playoffs for them.
No, even with Puka and Cooper Kupp. So yeah, it's just I hate to say that a team season is over after 2 weeks, but you got to be thinking the Rams might be cooked, as we like to say sometimes.
Mm-hmm. We do like to say that because they are cooked.
Yeah, but speaking of some teams that got cooked at least this week, or I labeled this section just teams blowing it. I've got about four, potentially 5 teams in here that I'd want to talk about it. We can just roll through them. Starting, that would be the Eagles against the Falcons, blew it late. Ravens couldn't score against the Raiders late. Bengals, they blew it on that pass interference call, and we'll get more into that. But then the Lions, Jared Goff really just kind of blew it there. And I put a question mark next to the Jags. And we could start with the Jags because I know you, as a Browns fan, were watching that game.
Yeah, and I feel like they did blow it because it was really close to us having to put the Browns on this list just because the Browns had that game wrapped up. I mean, Trevor Lawrence wasn't playing great. The Rams, obviously Cleveland's defense is really good, and we didn't really see that in week 1. The Cowboys just kind of rolled through them.
Right.
But week 2, it was really on display, and Trevor Lawrence was getting pressured quite a bit in the pocket. They were breaking up passes. They were keeping the run game quiet. The Jags just weren't able to do anything. And then it was probably late in that fourth quarter. The Browns drive down. I think they kick a field goal to go up by 5, and it's like, and then they give Trevor Lawrence like 3 minutes to play with, and I'm like, there's no way that the Jags win this. And then they start driving down the field, and it's like, all right, well, this is the Jags game to lose, and then they just lost.
So I don't know what game you're watching, but so in the third quarter, at the kind of the start of the third quarter, the Browns kick a field goal to go up 16-3, and then the Jags score a touchdown with ETN, so then they're down 16-10. Then they score a field goal, so now they're only down 3, and then the Browns get a safety on Lawrence to make it 18-13.
That's what it was.
And then it looks like, I do remember, watching that game. Jags get the ball back with, I want to see how much time was left.
Yeah, I think it was just like that whole game. It just didn't feel like the Jags were in it.
Yeah, the Jags had 1:27 left on their own 10 to drive down the field. And they, honestly, to me, it felt like they blew it. It didn't really look like any parts of the offense were really working well throughout the entire game. You had some spots, obviously, but they put together, what was it, 2? They put together a touchdown drive against the Browns. I know the Browns have a tough defense, but you got some pretty dynamic weapons there on offense in Jacksonville, and you're at home. And your defense is honestly playing pretty well because really, I know, the final score says 18-13, but the defense held the Browns to 16 points. So,
and three field goals.
yeah, there was 2 touchdowns between both these teams today or this game.
Yeah, it felt like when the Browns didn't score a touchdown, gave the ball back. It's like well, Jags. I mean the Jags at that point they had scored. I feel like they had gotten back into the game. They had a
No, yeah, for
touchdown
sure.
recently, so it's like you can drive the ball,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just kind of game was over.
Yeah, Lawrence finishes 14 for 30, 220 yards. They, I don't know what it is. There's a couple of these teams that they just give up on the run when their running backs are doing well. ETN, 13 carries, 52 yards and a touchdown. I mean, I just don't. I don't know. You got to be thinking maybe is is he on the is Doug Peterson going to be on the hot seat if it gets much worse? Because they collapsed at the end of last year.
Yeah, I mean this just seems like what the Jags do at this point because Trevor Lawrence is good enough to get them to the playoffs, to
Mm-hmm.
win games when it matters. But it really just seems like a lot of these teams, the play calling and the
Mm-hmm.
game plan that they go into it with is holding these quarterbacks back.
Yeah.
It really does feel like it falls on coaching.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that I've gotten to know more as like I watch more football, get older, kind of understand the game is, I'd always hear people complaining about play calling and how that's holding people back. And I'm like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm like, oh, well, thinking about just like, oh, if you call a run here, you call a pass here. But no, like a lot of these pass plays, like we'll talk about the Bears later on, some other teams, but like just designing plays behind the line of scrimmage that just don't work and keep going back to that. And I think just with Trevor Lawrence, like I feel like they were trusting a lot of deep balls from Trevor, which I think he can make, but you got to give him some easier targets to hit, especially when he finishes below 50% passing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you just gotta. They're like confidence builders. You got to give them
Mm-hmm.
some of these short yardage ones. You get the ball up 6 yards. Hand it off to the running back for a first down. Get it up
Mm-hmm.
8 yards. Um, you
And
know,
trust your running back when he's playing well. I mean, uh, 52 yards on 13 carries for ETN. That's well. I mean, that's close. What is that? I'll look at this real quick. I can't do math off the top of my head. That's 4 yards per carry on the nose. Like,
and I feel like he wasn't really doing well in the first half, if I remember
mm,
correctly. Because I mean, I have him on my fantasy team, and I was like,
right,
the whole game, I'm like, okay, this guy's a bust. And
right.
then they actually started using him late in the game, but when they started using him, it was like almost too late because they were running the clock down too fast.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, the Jags fall to 0-2. Browns improved to 1-1. Another team that I think really had a lot of chances to get back in their game because I watched all of it and just simply couldn't. Mainly kind of getting held back by their quarterback play were the Lions against the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean that's one that I might have stat watched this just because. I mean, did it even look like the Lions were like had a chance of that? It felt
They
to me
had
almost like the Bucks just had that game controlled.
no the Lions had multiple times in that game, especially in that well there was one point at the end of the first half when they get into field goal range and Dan Campbell is kind of he's not really they don't really know what they want to do and they get people out there late. They think they want to go for it. I think it was either like third or fourth down, and then but then he's like, oh no, send the kicking unit out, and then they don't have. I think it was they just didn't have enough time or they had too many people. They didn't have timeouts and the clock just ran out, so they missed an opportunity at 3 points there. And then at the end, um, I mean, so there was no scoring in that fourth quarter. Uh, and in that fourth quarter, let me look at the Lions drives. And Jared Goff, there's 2 picks in this game. In the fourth quarter, let's see here. That's fourth quarter. On their possessions in the fourth quarter went punt, turnover on downs, and for the Bucks, they went um, punt, 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 end of game. So, and the Bucks had the lead. They scored that touchdown with Baker in the third quarter, and the Lions they had multiple opportunities. They just couldn't get it done. And there was a lot of throws by Jared Goff that were either in the dirt, overthrown, picked off. It was overall just a sloppy game when the Lions defense was showing out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lions have games like this though, because that just comes with Dan Campbell's play calling, which I like. He's a very aggressive coach, which it's like high risk, high reward. I mean, that's where you see a lot of these turnover on downs. That's where you see a lot of these, like, obviously missed those 3 free points. But I mean, he's a guy that wants to go for 7.
Right.
And it feels like that was a game where they kind of needed one of those, and they just were a touch off. But I think all teams have that.
They did execute I think in the first half executed a fake punt with the pass from Jack Fox, I believe, and that was crazy. And I actually saw that someone, I think it was on Prize Picks or Underdog Fantasy, took
over his passing.
Yeah, for the season, and it hit. Obviously, it hit. That's crazy. I might have to start doing that. But I'm surprised on the best performances you don't have Aiden Hutchinson, who sacked Baker Mayfield 4.5 times.
Yeah, I mean, he was all over there. I think it's just like their defense played incredible. Aiden Hutchinson was a monster.
And that's against the Bucs offensive line that's honestly pretty solid.
Yeah. But then at the end of the day, it was one of those performances that like was so singled out because his team lost. It's like,
that's true.
It's tough as a defensive player when you do that. Baker Mayfield at this point is an MVP candidate. He should be in the front running. And you put him in the dirt 5 times.
Yeah.
And your team still can't back you up on offense.
Right.
That's what feels bad.
Yeah, Baker threw his first pick of the season this year. We all knew it was going to happen at some point. We know Baker. It was one of those like aggressive throws from him into kind of like double coverage on a short route. But other than that, he scores 2 touchdowns. One of them is an 11-yard rushing touchdown, a career long, which in the post game he kind of laughed at. He was like, career long?
He's like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's okay. He's no Lamar. It's okay.
That's longer than we've rushed it in.
Yeah. But he was 12 for 19, 185 passing yards, a touchdown and pick. That one, he actually led the Bucs in rushing yards with 34 yards on 5 carries. Chris Godwin was his favorite target, 7 catches, 117 yards in that touchdown. The Bucs, and they've got they're knocking on that door of going to 3-0, starting the year 3-0 because they play the Broncos at home next week.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if they drop that game.
Yeah. Lions, not gonna lie, kind of blew it there. Like you said, I think they have games like this, especially Jared Goff. He can kind of be a turnover merchant sometimes, but and I did just get a notification a little bit ago that Dan Campbell actually is selling his house because he keeps getting, because his address got leaked. Sports fans, what are we doing here?
Yeah, leave these guys alone.
Yeah.
I mean, people invest too much emotions into the game. It's like if their favorite team loses, you're going to go hate on the players and the coach. It's like, okay, why don't you go out there and try to win against, you got Baker Mayfield who's sitting on the ground more than he is standing, and he's throwing, 200 yards in your face.
Right. And that's the thing is like, maybe it'd be different if I wouldn't say it'd be different for me. I'm sure it's different when you live in the city, you're part of the town and whatnot. Your emotions are more tied to it. But me personally, I love sports. I love football. I love the Cowboys. But like when they lose, I'm not going to go out and DM Micah Parsons and be like, hey, get off your podcast and get in the weight room or something. Because then he's going to look at me and be like, well, you're 5 foot nothing, 100 whatever.
He's
So
like, I squatted more than your bloodline like this morning.
that's true. So I think in a PSA to sports fans, chill.
Yeah, it's not that deep.
Just like some people are going after the refs in the Bengals Chiefs game, which I have them. I don't know if you'll agree with me on this because you saw my tweet afterwards in that game, but Bengals blow that game against the Chiefs. I say they blow it because they probably had one of the worst performances out of Patrick Mahomes in a while. He threw 2 picks.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it's like super popular to glaze Patrick Mahomes at this point. I don't think like those picks were like necessarily like one of them definitely wasn't his fault, but
The first one was his fault. That was bad.
yeah, that was bad.
Double coverage on a short route. I mean, but the second one is just was an amazing catch by Cameron Taylor-Britt.
Oh yeah, was that the one where you went up?
Yeah,
OBJ. I mean, that had to have been catch of the year, and it's by a defensive back.
Yeah. And I saw someone, I think it was actually Shannon Sharp and Chad Ochocinco on their podcast talking about how, so that was to Xavier Worthy. They need to incorporate him, like they need to incorporate him into a more defined route tree, because when he's out there and he's on the outside the numbers, what route do you think he's running? What route do you think the fastest guy in the NFL is running?
Probably he's just running down the field.
It's a go route. It's a 9. That's what, and they all know that. It's like, all right, well, if I can just at least keep up with you, I know you're not going to cut inside. So just,
no, that's kind of like how Tyreek evolved. I mean,
yes, that's exactly what they were saying.
Yeah, they started him out just on go routes. They're like, okay, just burn the guy. But then you're just going to have these safeties play deep. You're going to have, you're going to know what to look for. And then now Tyreek's probably one of the best route runners in the league because
exactly.
I mean, he's fast, which means crazy thought here. He can make quick cuts too. So he's he can burn people, and then he switches up so quickly that it's like, how are you supposed to stay on him? Like, you can't stick to him.
Exactly. Because a lot of times when and we'll get back to that Chiefs Bengals game, but when you're throwing to Tyreek, you honestly, I wouldn't say it's even throwing him open. You know where you're throwing a ball to a certain spot because you know he's going to be able to get there.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times Tua just tosses it up and he's like, go get it, Tyreek. And you see Tyreek just like, he just paths to the ball.
Yeah. But that Bengals Chiefs game, I had a tweet that said they both sold and robbed. They got robbed. I want to say they sold because, on that DPI call at the end of the game, I know a lot of people are upset because you don't want the game to come down to the refs, but you can't do that. And that ball was not going to get caught either way.
Yeah. And my thing is, okay, people are getting, this is where, I mean, you bring it up with, what was the last game? The Lions. We talked about that. People, sports fans, NFL fans, like they don't really know what's going on. I've seen a lot of comments from people that have never touched a football. And then you have people that are like, yeah, I played defensive tackle all 4 years in college. And so I know what, a lot of people are saying like, oh, there was a hold on that last play too, and they didn't call that. I'm like, okay, well, if they call a hold on it, you know how unbearable it's going to be if they call hold on every single play. I mean, they called one on the play before. How many holds do you want?
Right.
I mean,
also if they
you
call
have a guy who's out of the play, like
right.
You can't. It's almost like pass interference logic, where it's like the ball's uncatchable. Hendrickson is out of the play. Sure, he might be getting choked out a little bit. He could be selling that quite a bit, which is what it looked like. But he's nowhere near. He doesn't have the ability to get to Patrick Mahomes. So why would you call that, right? I mean, and then there was a lot of people that were showing like still shots of the pass interference and like, this is pass interference. It's like, you can't show still frames. You got to look at the whole play.
Yes.
He was very early. That was probably the clearest pass interference we've seen all season.
Yeah. And
that ball is going to be caught if he doesn't run into the player. So, I mean, it's like,
right. Well, I would even argue that even if he doesn't run into him,
She
It's
Rice.
a little bit. If he doesn't run into Rashee Rice, it's kind of a uncatchable ball. Like it might have went over his head, and the game is over.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
I
you
would
have
even
to be
say
going for
too,
the ball too.
yeah,
And people are saying, "Well, what do you want? He's making a play on the ball." No, he's not. Like
yeah,
he's nowhere near having like that ball.
right.
He's clearly just trying to break it up,
Hmm.
but he's early. I mean,
And to the yeah,
that's a call that we were whining about that the Saints didn't get called on with the Rams a few years ago.
hmm,
I guess that was probably like 4 or 5 years ago now.
yeah,
But I mean, we were whining about that not getting called. It was the exact same play. We call it now, and now you're whining that it is called.
yeah. And I would even say when you bring up the holding call or the holding that could have been called on that last play, okay, it gets called. Those penalties offset. You give Patrick Mahomes another chance with the ball. I know it's 4th and
Mm-hmm.
forever, but like anything could happen there.
Yeah, plus they still have to kick a field goal.
Right.
Move on
So
to the next play. Block the field goal.
yeah.
I mean,
So the Bengals they had their, like I said, Patrick Mahomes throws 2 picks. The Chiefs offense doesn't totally look 100%. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be out now, which is why they signed Kareem Hunt. Uh,
mm-hmm.
I think honestly, Bengals, that was their best chance to beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead, and they kind of wasted it. It was a good game, I thought, but both offenses just didn't really look all put together. Defenses really showed out, especially the Chiefs. Uh, and Bengals are 0-2 now.
Yeah, and I know you told me that the offenses weren't like looked bad, but I mean, people are like not realizing that these are probably two of the top 5 defenses in the league. If not top 5, they're two top
Yeah,
10
I
defenses.
agree.
I mean, the Chiefs' defense. Say what you want about Patrick Mahomes, their defense was the reason they were in the Super Bowl last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at the Bengals. I mean, they have really solid defensive backs. They have probably one of the best pass rushers in the league. I mean, their defense is really good. I mean, this was kind of what I expected from the game. I didn't expect this to be like a 40-45 shootout.
No, and didn't they show that all their past games have been decided like super close?
Yeah, I mean, that's just how these two teams play. I mean, this to me looked like what we should expect from the AFC Championship game. I mean,
Which I hope
yeah,
that's
go
what this
ahead.
is. I
Yeah,
hope that's what this is.
yeah. And then, a lot of people are saying the Chiefs' offense didn't look that great. I mean, people are saying that the refs are just always babying the Chiefs. I
Mm-hmm.
think there was probably at least like 3 to 5 really good plays by the Chiefs. They pushed the ball really far down the field, called back due to holding. And it's like,
Yep.
at some point, I feel like there should be a stat for like, how you have receivers that this was their total yards that they had, but this is their total yards they could have had. They should
Mm-hmm.
have that for offenses because I mean, you'll really figure out first of all, which offense is probably the best in the league, and then which offense is the most penalized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they got to tell. I mean, well, first of all, yeah, that one of their tackles kept holding. Was it Jawan Taylor or was it their right tackle?
The one
Their
who
left
was
tackle?
guarding Hendrickson.
Yeah. I forget. It's Jawan Taylor, and I forget who their other tackle is, but they need to tell one of them to stop holding, and they need to tell the other to stop false starting because while he doesn't get called for it every time, he's going to, and that's going to cost them.
Yeah, and I mean, good on Hendrickson. I mean, he's such a tough player to
Mm-hmm.
guard. You were
Yep.
expecting a couple holding calls just because of how shifty he is, how flexible he is. But
Wanya
obviously, you
Morris.
can't get it every single time.
Wanya Morris is the left tackle, and he actually caught that touchdown for Patrick Mahomes, which was kind of a crazy play.
Oh yeah, he got the touchdown, and I think it was like the next drive or something. Got called for a false start,
And I think
which brought
he
back
might have
a
gotten he might have gotten benched.
yeah.
I want to say. So anyway, we'll move on from that.
Well, also one
Bengals.
last thing.
Yeah, there you go.
A lot of people probably don't care about the hip drop tackle rule. But there was a hip drop tackle on this, which, Jamar Chase got
yep.
super heated about. I think people are gonna. They were looking at that like, why is he super upset? I mean, this is one thing that I've heard a few people talking about, but I don't know if we're talking about it enough. There's probably been quite a few hip drop tackles still, which I believe there was one on Pacheco, which led to
Which is how he
his
got hurt.
broken foot. Wasn't called. And it's going to be one of those things where it's almost impossible to call it on the field, and they're just going to hand out fines. So to me, it's just like, why was this rule introduced if we're not going to call it?
Right. And you could, like, even I was like, oh, why is Jamar Chase getting so mad? And I remember actually, this is how, this is where my mom doesn't watch a ton of NFL football, but she was watching that game and she's like, oh, did you see that happen? I was like, yeah, Mom, I don't know why he was getting so mad, but like, you just can't do that. And then come to find out it was about a hip drop tackle. And, he's obviously getting super mad about that. I understand. But also, there's emotions and everything brought into football. But Jamar, you got to know when you're getting that pissed at a ref, you're going to get called for a 15-yard penalty.
But also, plus, I mean, the injury risk on hip drop tackles. I mean, we saw what happened to Pacheco. Jamar's, he's in his contract year. Like, he's playing this year. He's playing to attempt to be the highest paid receiver of all time. So if they snap his ankle because of that, I mean, I would be a little pissed too, because that's all I gotta say on the hip drop tackle.
Yeah. We'll talk about another team that could be possibly in the AFC Championship game. Not the Raiders, but the Ravens, who were there last year, and they got beat by the Raiders, and my boy Max Crosby getting that sack late in the game against Lamar Jackson. Ends the game with 2 sacks on Lamar. And the Ravens, they had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, I want to say. Raiders couldn't really get that much going. Gardner Minshew was actually really efficient outside of his interception. But, I mean, I told you this before we started the stream. If the Ravens get Derrick Henry, why would you get Derrick Henry if you're not going to use him anymore?
I know. I mean, this is what we expected from Derrick Henry, though, right? I mean, I actually saw some Ravens fans. I think it was the BDGE podcast.
Oh,
Big Dogs.
I like them. I like them.
One of my favorites to watch. There was some Ravens fans on there, and I think one of the dudes who wasn't a Ravens fan was like, "Why would Derrick Henry even they don't use him in the game plan? He's probably going to get 12 touches for 50 yards." And one of the Ravens fans, he's like, well, he's not going to get 30 carries a game because he's old, but he'll probably get 15 to 18 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown.
Look at that.
And guess what?
Carries, 84 yards and a tug.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how they're going to use Derrick Henry. It felt like they just didn't use Justice Hill enough.
Right.
Is my thing. I mean, you can't run Derrick Henry 30 times a game, but I mean, the Ravens game plan forever has been, getting good yardage on the ground. You have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson as threats. Justice Hill is pretty good, and that's kind of what was working for them in the first game as well.
Yeah, and you got to kind of feel bad for Lamar, who's honestly been playing pretty decent. I mean, he had almost 250 yards this game, 21 for 34 passing. But the Ravens go up 23-13 with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and the Raiders go on I don't want to say it was 3 straight, but they put up then 13, right?
In the fourth?
Yes, 13 unanswered points. And the Raiders have a couple times late in that game to come back, and I have them here on the list. They blew it. That's a game you should win. They're at home. You have the lead. Gardner Minshew. The Raiders' run game is abysmal. They cannot trust Zamir White or Alexander Madison. But let me tell you, if they continue to get Devontae Adams, and I was totally wrong about this guy, Brock Bowers looked like a top 10 tight end in this league. And I was so surprised as a rookie to come out and have that game or have that performance against a Raiders team that has a pretty solid defense.
I was not wrong about Brock Bowers. I was. I
Nine
think,
catches, nine
yeah,
catches.
he's on. I think he's on both my fantasy teams because I mean this kid is going to be the best tight end in the league here in a year. Maybe that's a crazy take, but I mean he was insane on Georgia, and I mean they were running him. He was like one of their main game plans last week, and
Mm-hmm.
now this past game, it's like we actually saw what Brock Bowers can do. I mean, along with that, I think people forget how good Devontae Adams is.
Oh yeah.
I mean, look up. I saw this catch where have you seen the catch where his toes are like barely in bounds and he's parallel to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Devontae Adams was just crazy. I mean, that
Yeah,
was.
and
I think
I
they're going to be good this year.
it's actually kind of weird because I like Max Crosby and Devontae Adams so much that I'll listen to their post game interviews,
Mm-hmm.
whether win or lose, because I felt bad for them the last couple of years where it's like they are like the leaders on the offense and defense, and if they go to another, like they could both easily go to other teams like on Super Bowl contenders, and it's good to see. Not good. It's interesting to see their frustration when they lose because they're like, we are like top five in our positions.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they win, they're just like, it feels so good, like to win this game, shit like that. Like I've almost been watching the Raiders from afar because of those guys in general. And for them to win that and Gardner Minshew to just ball out outside of that interception. I mean, did you see the clip of Max Crosby going up to Gardner Minshew after the interception while Crosby's going onto the field and he's like talking to him and he's like pointing his finger at him like don't get down or whatever shit like that. Like that fires me up.
Yeah, and I mean, I was looking up. I really like what Antonio Pierce has done, the head coach of the Raiders,
Yes, I don't know if I
because.
really like what he's done because they're 1-1 right now, but
But I mean, this team isn't like that. You have. I hate to bring down the parade, but you have Gardner Minshew as your starting quarterback. You know, you have no running backs.
mm-hmm.
You have your defense is hinged on a singular player who.
Two play Christian Wilkins too.
Okay, I mean, they have sure they have like good players here and there
Right.
sprinkled in, but this is a team that should not be anywhere near competitive. I mean, last year with the same situation, they were like horrendous. They
And they're
lost.
probably
Didn't they lose 3-0 to the Vikings?
yes. And they're probably going to end up being 2-1 actually after this next week because they play the Panthers.
Oh yeah,
And we'll get to that. But
we'll get
uh,
to the Panthers.
yeah, last thing I want to say on this is just great win by the Raiders. Ravens, you blew it. You're 0-2, and Justin Tucker might be washed.
I mean, okay. I'll say this about Justin Tucker. His whole appeal was how good he is from like long range. They're
Yeah,
like, oh, he's the greatest kicker of all time. He can hit 50-yarders like it's nothing. But what game was it that I was watching where they were just talking about the field goal situation? They're like, the 50-yarder has become the 300-yard drive. I can't remember what commentator said that.
oh, well, you're
But
throwing in a golf term, and I just don't know I don't know how to relate to that.
300 yards is like a long way for a drive. But nowadays,
Okay.
everybody on the pro tour is driving 300 yards. And it's like, that's the bare minimum.
Well,
And at
because
this point, it's like 50-yarder was, impressive before, but now it's like a chip shot. It's like you're really good if you can hit the 60-yarders.
mm-hmm.
But now it's like when you're in 50 to 55, it's like you should make that. And I mean, it's crazy to say, but the stats back it up because I mean, there's been like, I think they're hitting at a higher clip from 50 than from like they ever have from inside 50
Mm-hmm.
in history. And Justin Tucker has missed two 50-yarders, which is
He didn't.
Crazy
I
to
want to
see.
say they showed a stat where he's 1 for 7 on his last 50-yard attempts, 50
Hmm.
plus. So
And then you have guys like Fairburn, who's actually in my. We'll get to him, but he's on my best performances. Who's hitting 50 yarders like it's nothing.
yeah, I want to say nope. I still have my. I've still got my worst performances saved up for our later games, but let me exit some of these.
Yeah, we haven't really gotten into some terrible games yet.
No, we'll get that into our next section. But last team that blew it in my mind, the Eagles, which actually does bring up one of my worst performances, in CJ Gardner Johnson, who probably one of the number one shit talkers in terms of defensive backs. And, a lot of people are giving him shit for now wearing number 8 to honor Kobe Bryant. That's a bold move because I would say he's still like in the top echelon of corners, but like you need to be like top 5 to where like you make almost no bad plays. CJ Gardner Johnson for the last couple of years has given up his fair share of bad plays, and he gave them up on Monday night when Kirk Cousins, the Falcons offense wasn't really alive the whole game, but they go down the field after the Eagles kind of blow a potential to just kneel the game out, and he gives up that touchdown. And also, CJ Gardner Johnson probably should have been flagged for taking his helmet off. I know he's saying, oh, it just fell off. If you look at it, I mean,
I think it did. I think it was. I remember looking at it the first time, game speed, and I was like, he took his helmet off. And then I watched it back, and I was like, he comes through the pile, and his helmet is still on his head. I was like, okay, he definitely ripped that off his head. But then you look back, and if it's slow-mo, you see that's starting to come up a little bit over his ears, and he just kind of like pops it off.
And he does try and kind of like catch it and like falls on the ground. And he's like looking at the ref, and like it's so funny sometimes to see the players be like try and be so genuine with the refs. He's like, it fell off.
Yeah, I know. You don't need lip syncs to hear that. I mean, he was.
But he still falls on my worst performances because I believe he also gave up that touchdown to Darnell Mooney earlier in the game.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm not sure if he was guarding Drake London there at the end either.
I thought he was guarding Drake London, but regardless, when you're part of that Eagles secondary where I honestly think their defensive coordinator kind of blew the end of that game because, and again, I'll bring up Chad Ochocinco on his podcast. He was like, why are they playing? They're playing like they're blocking, like they're trying to defend a punt, like a punt return.
Yeah, they're playing
everyone super deep.
Yeah, which it was kind of crazy because I mean, sure they don't have a lot of time, but they don't have an abysmal time. Which, so why are we playing so deep?
They have no
it's like they're playing as if it's like 20 seconds left, and the Falcons need like 3 really big passing plays. I mean, they moved down the field. I mean, Kyle Pitts got involved there at the end. I mean, they were just biting off chunks of the yard or chunks of the field because they had
the holes were open.
Yeah.
And
plus, I know a lot of people are hating on Saquon because he dropped what would have been a go-ahead touchdown, which would have won the game.
Well, but not even a would have been touchdown, but he dropped at least a first down, which then you can just kneel it out.
Yeah, or at the very least, he just stops the clock.
Exactly. Yes.
But at the same time, the Eagles' defense was stopping the Falcons a good amount throughout that game. They needed one stop. They needed to not even like they needed to stop the entire. They just needed to stop a singular play.
The Eagles defense.
Yeah.
On that last drive. Yeah, and yeah,
there wasn't enough time for like the Falcons couldn't afford, to have a lot of the clock get chewed off.
Yeah,
you sat Kirk once. I mean, the game's pretty much over.
There was 1 minute and 39 seconds left. The Falcons had 0 timeouts and started on their own 30. Falcons had 0 timeouts, and There was one more thing I wanted to mention. They needed a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to prevent them from getting to like across the 50-yard line. You need to prevent them from getting in the end zone. And you have 70 yards and a minute. You have 100 seconds to play with, and they have 0 timeouts.
Yeah. I
They
mean,
blew
you just deny the sidelines and prevent deep balls, but I mean, it didn't feel like that's what they were doing at all.
So
I don't know.
Yeah, and Jalen Hurts throws that. And honestly, did you think the Eagles had a chance at the end?
Like when they got the ball back?
Yes, because the Eagles had 34 seconds left.
No.
And they needed a field goal to win it.
I didn't think they had a chance. I mean, I think their chances to win the game went away when they decided to pass on 3rd down there at the end to Saquon.
Because then at the very least, just run the ball. Even if you don't get a first down,
you're chewing off like 40 seconds of clock.
Yep. And now, then the Falcons get the ball with a minute left. So, and if you think about it, they had a minute 39 left. The Eagles got the ball back with 34 seconds left. That means you have to make them.
They're a lot more pressured.
Yeah, exactly.
With time.
A lot more pressure. But yeah, so Eagles dropped to 1-1, and the Falcons improved to 1-1, which is a good thing for me. And I actually made a tweet about this because I did the Drake meme where it's like Cowboys losing to an NFC South opponent, and then it's Eagles also losing to the NFC South. Because, I mean, do you want to? Our next section is, I put it as just unwatchable games. Do you want to take the bull by the horns here on this one?
You want to talk about that Cowboys game?
Yeah, we'll talk about that one first.
I feel like that was unwatchable for Cowboys fans.
Exactly.
For the rest of the NFL, we were like chilling. We're like, sweet. We can watch the Cowboys lose. The Saints are officially back. Alvin Kamara rose from the dead. Derek Carr is like prime Peyton. I was going to say Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. Doesn't matter. I mean, are the Saints the team to beat now? I think they are.
They sure look like it. Their offense is on fire. Derek Carr is looking great. And if you thought, or at least I thought, if there was any team's defense that was going to put the Saints are the best offense in the league topic to rest, it would be the Cowboys defense. And I have this as one of the worst performances. And honestly, I would label it as the worst performance with my fandom involved because, and I'm going to put the worst performance on not only the Cowboys defense, but Mike Zimmer, Cowboys defense coordinator, who the whole game, they did not adjust to what the Saints were doing. They were living off the deep ball and Alvin Kamara. Adjust to that. And I see Micah Parsons' podcast either yesterday or 2 days ago where he's like, yeah, guys, like don't put all the blame on Zimmer. We just, not all 11 of us were bought in and it kind of just got away from us. I'm going to be honest with you. That's not reassuring one bit. It's like, oh yeah, we just weren't, all 11 of us, we just weren't bought in.
Well, I think the thing is they underestimated the Saints offense. I think they were looking after week 1. They're like, whatever. I mean, this is going to be the Saints from like a year ago.
Like that was
they're already thinking like, all right, let's go down the list. What are some games that we need to worry about? And then the Saints come out there and they just start insert word here to their defense, and it's like at some point I think they were just like, bro, this is like unwinnable. I mean, the Saints I want to look at their scoring drives because I think I saw that they scored on like their first 15 drives of the season.
You would be correct. And yeah.
So I mean, it's like, how are you going to stop this team? So at some point, I mean, yeah, they probably did just buy out. Their defense was just like, whatever. On to next week. We're already looking ahead to next week, so let's just refocus on that.
And I'll hit on the offense real quick, and then I'll kind of compare this to another game. So, Dak finishes 27 for 39, 293 yards, a touchdown to CD, and 2 picks. CD, 4 receptions, 90 yards, and the run game could not get going at all for the Cowboys, so that's not very reassuring.
Which that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I'll compare this to last year when the Cowboys lost to the Cardinals and how many people were hating on them then, because this is a very similar game in terms of, and Micah brought up another game a couple years ago when the Cowboys lost to the Broncos at home. The Broncos were led by Teddy Bridgewater. It's a game where the Cowboys defense was just out of it. They didn't adjust. They, gave up big plays at the start, and the Cowboys are not good when they're playing from behind. And then the offense plays the same way that they did in this game, where they just can't get anything going. Dak plays like shit, and it was just a complete collapse from both teams. And it's kind of a reminder of you can't just coast in these games. But as a Cowboys fan, you just don't want to see that because it's just frustrating. And I know, and it doesn't get much easier because they got to play the Ravens, thankfully in Arlington this week. But I don't think the Ravens are going to – they don't want to go down 0-3. Cowboys don't want to go down 1-2. I think that's going to be a game to watch this week. But I think what they got to do is they got to be able to adjust because they did not against the Saints. I know you're down early. You're down big early. But I just had no confidence in that game after halftime.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like it was a Cowboy loss, They do this all the time where they go into a matchup that you're like, oh, they should easily win this or at least compete, and then they just get blown out, and you're like, well, maybe the Cowboys aren't that good, and then the next couple weeks they're just going to be destroying teams. So it's like, overreact to it all you want. I think the big takeaway for me is that the Saints might be a good team, although I don't think I'm as bought in as everybody else. That's my hot take of the week. Is I still am not sold on the Saints. I don't think this production is sustainable.
I could agree with you there. I want to see who they play for the next couple weeks. They do play the Eagles at home on Sunday. I think that's also a good game to watch.
I think people are going to be super high on the Saints and super low on the Eagles. So that could be the upset of the week if people are looking at it.
In terms of who would get upset?
Saints would get upset. I mean, I guess I don't know the lines yet, but I assume that the Saints would be favored in that game.
Probably.
If not, I'm flipping, and I'm saying the Saints are going to roll.
The Saints. Good. The spread is Saints 2.5.
Yeah. But I mean, Alvin Kamara, I mean, he's a guy that he's a guy that I'm not really going to be super high on. I mean, he's almost 30 years old. He's had too many injuries to count. He's never played a full season of football. I mean, sure, he's had some of like the best seasons we've seen from like a running back. He's had some of the best games we've ever seen. I mean, he had that Christmas game against the Packers. Then he scored like 5 touchdowns there. He had another like 6 touchdown game.
Yeah.
But I mean, he hasn't been like a top back in the league since 2020, maybe 2021. That was the last time he got a Pro Bowl vote. So I mean, there's no way you can come back from that and sustain the performances he's had. I mean, he's averaging like 2 touchdowns a week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I doubt he's going to finish the year with 40 touchdowns.
Probably not, but
and is bound to regress at some point. I mean, it does feel kind of weird that it's back-to-back games where he's the front runner for the MVP, like he is the best player in the league currently. But he has had really good games in the past, and we saw how he was on the Raiders. We've seen how he is on the Saints previously. They didn't really make that many changes this year, so I'm not fully bought in yet. I need to see another week or two. If they beat the Eagles the same way they beat the first two teams, if they put up 40 points on the Eagles, then I'm going to be like, okay, I'm
Yeah,
bought in. That's it.
that's
But I need to see that first.
yeah, that's why I'm kind of looking forward to this next game against the Eagles. I mean, if they can do to the Eagles like they did to the Cowboys, which arguably Eagles they probably have a better defense. I think they have a better defense than the Cowboys. I'll say that, just in terms of the weapons that they have. You got to think about that defensive line. Um,
Yes.
okay, well they got a lot of young dogs on there. Linebackers, we probably win that department, and then secondary, it's pretty close, but okay, it's a pretty evenly matched defense compared to the Cowboys. If they can do that at home, I mean, you're gonna have to be bought in to the Saints.
Yeah. And I feel like I go into NFL years the same way that I watch TV shows. I give a 3 episode rule. I say after 3 episodes, if I'm still not vibing it, I'm
Mm-hmm.
dropping it. You know, that's how I'm with these NFL teams. If after 3 games, like if the Ravens don't show out this next game, that's it. I'm scrapping them. The Saints don't look amazing after 3 weeks. If they can't repeat similar production, that's it. I'm hopping off the boat.
Well, a team that is they might have a 18 game, uh, 18 games on their quarterback. If they're not vibing with them, they're out. Looks like it's the Carolina Panthers who benched Bryce Young after 2 weeks. After they lose to the Chargers 26-3. Another not great performance from Bryce. Everyone's coming for his, supporting him. I'm one of those guys
Mm-hmm.
where, I understand he's probably just not a right situation. Do I think he's the greatest athlete? Probably not. Do I think
No.
he's going to be a successful NFL quarterback? I still don't know. But it's definitely not going to be in that system, and he gets benched for Andy Dalton, who it's not going to get much easier for them because, like I said, they have to play the Raiders next week. But I guess kind of your thoughts.
I think benching Bryce is probably not the right call. I don't think there is a right call. I think the Panthers are probably in the worst situation they've ever been in as an organization, where they think that they can make one change. And sure, it was. I think this was. God, what did they say?
What are you looking for?
Who's the head coach of the Panthers?
Dave Canales,
Dave Canales. Yeah, they said
who,
this was his first big boy decision.
I mean,
But
yeah, but benching
it
him
is.
after it is, but 2 weeks, you're giving him 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
I heard a lot of people say maybe this is why you should play him in the preseason.
Yeah. I mean, he's not the problem, to be honest. He's not the problem on that team. And they think that starting Andy Dalton is going to be the solution. No. This team is going to be terrible still, probably worse with Andy Dalton. He might have there's this crazy effect that I guess backup quarterbacks have, where you bench your starter the first week after you bench your starter and start a backup who's has been bad in the past. He seems to play well that first week, right?
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be something that's been a trend. But in the long run, it's terrible. We look at Josh Dobbs last year.
He had his
I'm
run.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Andy Dalton has run, but cool. Now you guys have 2 wins, and you'll probably end with 2 wins. So it's like
Right.
you can't fix it off one player. I mean, the whole team is bad. Their defense looks very unorganized. Doesn't look like they know what's going on. It looks like the play calling has been done by a little kid who's scribbling with crayons in the local IHOP. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the offensive line is probably the worst line I've seen in a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and your best weapons are number 3 receivers on other teams. Adam Thielen is probably either him or Deontay Johnson is your best
Mm-hmm.
weapon.
Yeah,
And who would they be number twos on?
and they can't really use their younger weapons, who I was excited to watch, like Jonathan Mingo and Xavier Legette,
Hmm.
because they just can't get the ball to him because of the way the offense is drawn up. And I actually, it was kind of sad because I always joke about with you how I feel like given a chance, I could not in the NFL, college, whatever, but I could if we played like a pickup game, I could sling the football. I could be a decent quarterback. I'm watching film on Bryce Young and someone decipher it, and he's like, look, he just can't really. He's like, with how short he is, he has to throw the ball off his back toe, which if that's his throwing motion, that's what it is, but it just doesn't help him. And I'm like, I do my like fake pat, 3-step drop backs throws, and I'm like, oh, I'm throwing off my back toe. Like I'm like, let me see if I can do it without it. I can't. And I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah, that's why you need taller quarterbacks, or that's why they tend to be taller, so that they can see above the line and they can step into the throws instead of stepping back to get
yeah.
over the line.
Yeah, and a lot of these, like from Bryce Young, it's either jump passes or, like I said, off his back toe, which mechanically just doesn't help you. And yeah, there are some problems with Bryce Young. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I don't
Hmm.
think he's the greatest athlete, but I think he can read defenses. I do think he was pro ready coming out of college, but it's also the system, and
Yeah,
it
and I
just
don't think he's getting coached either. I think that's another big thing is he's probably is in his second year now. He's probably the same skill level. He might even have regressed a bit since he came out of college
mm-hmm,
because I don't think they're coaching him well at all. I don't think they're trying to help him improve.
mm-hmm.
And the play calling's not set up well for him to succeed. It's probably still set up for like Cam Newton days. I mean, I
I
don't even
mean,
know.
well, he had Frank Reich, who then got fired midseason, and then he had another head coach. So that's two head coaches in your first year, and then he has Dave Canales, a first year head coach.
Yeah. And
Like it's a first year head coach and basically still a rookie quarterback because he just played his 18th game. So he just completed a full season technically of football, and in that full season, he had three different play callers.
yeah, and we saw how that happened, how that worked out for the Browns. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not well. And yeah, I mean, they need to rebuild that organization and they just need to accept the fact that they're going to be bad for years. I
Mm-hmm.
think at this point they're like scrambling to keep their jobs or something, be
Mm-hmm.
like, well, we need to make it to the playoffs or we need to be competitive. No, you just need to accept the fact that you're bad. You need to load up on some draft capital, get some good players, clean house,
Mm-hmm.
you know, new
Owner.
GM, well, yeah, and new head coach, new
I
coaches all
think
across the board.
I think I'm still not going to jump off of the Dave Canales boat, but I just think with the way the system is set up, it don't feel like it would work for a lot of quarterbacks. So
Yeah,
maybe you
I
are
don't
right.
think any quarterback could succeed
Yeah.
in there.
But last thing I want to hit on for this is how many more games do you think Bryce Young plays this year for the Panthers, and do you think this even if he plays more games, this will be his last year with the Panthers?
I think he probably plays like 7 more games, but I think it's going to be in spurts of like 2 games here, 3 games there, 2 games here.
Mhm.
And I think he's going to stay in the Panthers because I'm pretty sure they've kind of killed his trade value.
Right.
This is what we've seen from Zach Wilson with the Jets, and I mean that's a different story because I mean they gave him too many chances. It felt like,
Hmm.
but by the time they let him leave. It was like it's like what teams are like, why do we don't want him?
Right. Like, is Zach Wilson, is he QB3 on the Broncos or is he two? I think he's two.
I think he's 3. I think he's behind Stidham.
Right. We'll hit on that game real quick. We got a couple more games to hit on here. Uh, and on this section for I would say unwatchable. We can hit that Steelers game. They win against the Broncos 13-6. I mean, I don't know how the Steelers keep doing it right now.
I mean, you're playing the Broncos.
And
I think their defense is really good.
the Steelers defense, it's top 5 probably.
Yeah, and honestly, I was super high on Bo Nix coming into the season from what I saw from the preseason. But I think this is such a clear indication of how little the preseason matters.
Mm-hmm. Zach
Because,
Wilson, QB3, by the way.
yeah, behind Stidham.
Yep.
Yeah. And at some point, I think the Broncos are going to be looking for a
The
replacement to
same.
Bo Nix
At least for momentary. I don't
momentarily. I
know.
don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to put him on the back burner. I think he seems like a player that might be better off waiting a little bit to learn.
I think Sean Payton. I think with their weapons and whatnot, I don't really think they can be competitive and make the playoffs this year. I think Sean Payton
Mm-hmm.
kind of knows that, but you want to see him get better. So I think Bo Nix will probably play this whole year.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to see that,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation because, I mean, you have a guy like Russell Wilson come in and he can't even succeed in there, and I mean,
Hmm.
it's similar to like the Panthers where they were on such a high, and I mean,
Hmm.
actually both teams kind of peaked at the same time, which is kind of funny. They were on such a high, and then they lose everything that got them to the Super Bowl there a while ago. Um, and then they've just been on a steady decline, and they've been trying to like figure out the bumps to get them back up. But I think they just need to hit the valley to get back up the hill.
Yeah.
Momentum.
I have uh I have that game. I for one of my worst performances, I just put the Broncos in general because that was I watched that game, but it was pretty much unwatchable. The Steelers couldn't move the ball and the Broncos offensively couldn't get anything going. That's a game again with these rookie quarterbacks. You're not really helping them out. I feel like a lot of plays, behind the line of scrimmage, the run game can't get going. Uh, it's not putting them in favorable positions. They had the best play that they had was a trick play where they get inside the red zone, and then Bo Nix, I think the next play or two plays later, throws a pick in the end zone.
Yeah, and I did watch that. Actually, I watched that whole that whole drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, Bo Nix is starting to look good. I'm like, this is looking good, and he throws that in the end zone. I'm like, okay, this is like I'm hanging off the edge of this boat. I'm
Yeah,
about to let
but
go.
like I said, they need to keep him in there. And I think if you're the Broncos, if you can end the season and you're getting 4 or 5 wins, Bo Nix is looking better at the end of the year. I think that's a success.
Yeah, because I mean they're still in a better position than they were last season.
And they need to get the run game fixed because Bo Nix cannot be your leading rusher. 4 carries for 25 yards. He was 20 for 35 for 246 yards and 2 picks.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the return of the running backs. I think for a while there
The,
we were like, okay, receivers are like way more important. Running backs are super disposable.
at least
But
the importance of the running backs, we're seeing them.
yeah, but nowadays it's like, or at least this season so far, it's been like the running backs are like winning teams games. Like
Mm-hmm.
getting a good run game going really relies on having a talented running back. And the Broncos just don't have that.
Yeah. Steelers, like I said, don't know how they keep winning these games. I think at some point they're going to get into a place where they're going to get outdone offensively. Their defense can't hold up, but
Mm-hmm.
for the time being, they're 2-0. And I mean, it's
I hope
also
they.
interesting. It'll be interesting to see when Russell Wilson comes in.
I was gonna say I hope they keep starting Justin Fields because, to be honest, I predicted that Fields would start games this season.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to be after Russell Wilson struggled, not because Russell Wilson's hurt.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
But I do think Fields he definitely has a lot more potential
And I
going
think he
forward.
he also is not like Russell Wilson, who I think will try and do too much. I think Justin
Mm-hmm.
Fields would do what is given to him. Uh, and Russell Wilson, I feel like they might lose these 2 games because he tries to do too much offensively.
Yeah, and I feel like he's out of his prime. I feel like Russell Wilson, he had his time in the sunlight. He got a Super Bowl. He's done enough, and I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like at this point we're just trying to squeeze the little bit of life he has left out of him, and I think the Broncos kind of took that.
Agreed. My last game that I have in the unwatchable category, you can get to it because I know you have some stuff for this, and I have some stuff for it as well. Um,
Yeah, I
we've
watched this
got
whole game.
what?
I watched this whole game,
Me
start
too.
to finish.
Uh, Monday Night Football. Bears, no, Sunday Night
Mm-hmm.
Football.
Mm-hmm.
Bears Texans. Texans beat the Bears in a honestly pretty close game. Defense for the Bears really was coming up clutch against the Strouds. Um, but or against CJ Stroud, I should say. But CJ Stroud still has a really decent game. But
Mm-hmm.
offensively, the Bears they look there was no I'll just say there was no improvement between week 1 and week 2. I have them for the Bears offensive line at least for worst performance. One of my worst performances because of the amount of pressures they were giving up on Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't look good at all on offense, and I think people last week were like, "Oh, Caleb just needs to figure it out," and they just need to. I think what we saw from this week was that it really comes down to play calling because, I mean, every time he had a long pass opportunity, it felt like he was surprised.
Mm-hmm.
He threw 2 picks, I want to say.
Yep, 2 picks. They were honestly both, and they were both, I want to say, out of he was scrambling, getting out of a sack again, just getting
Mm-hmm.
pressured, and he just
He was just trying
throws.
to do too much.
Yeah.
But I mean, it it was very unwatchable. The offense was because it was like you're sitting there like, okay, can we? What's? I'm not rooting for the Bears or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
the whole time, definitely in the second half, I was just like, okay, I need to see something.
Right.
They would just like run the ball for 2 yards,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would
Pass
they'd
behind the line of scrimmage.
pass behind the line of scrimmage, and then run for a loss of like 3, and then that'd be the offense. Or they would, you know, pass. It seemed like all of their passing plays were 5 yards or less,
Mm-hmm.
which, I mean, you have a quarterback that we're comparing to Patrick Mahomes, and you're not giving him creative routes. You're just
Mm-hmm.
giving him like simple Madden suggested plays, and it's like,
And those plays would work if he had time to throw the ball.
mm-hmm. Because I mean, the first quarter they actually looked really good, and it's because they were drawing up plays that were the whole play developed in 2 seconds or less, which is
Mm-hmm.
what you need. Although later in the game he was getting probably 1 second in the pocket, but I think, gosh, I want to say Chris Collinsworth was commentating that game, and he was pointing it out early on, and he's like, the main issue is Caleb Williams, his average time to pass is like 5 seconds, and the
Mm-hmm.
league average is like 2.5. And you know why it's two and
Right.
a half? Because the play calling, the full routes develop in 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they were doing early on. And then they just went away from that. They just stopped calling plays that were developing fast. And
Mm-hmm.
then we saw the offensive line crumble because they cannot pass block for that long.
Yeah. Uh, it's one of those things where the Texans defense, they were blitzing a lot or they were stacking the
Mm-hmm.
box. And it was one of those things was like, until you prove that you can stop it, we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, no, they blitzed on like, I think they forced a pressure on pretty much every single blitz.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they allowed a good play on a blitz.
And you were talking to me about, and this is where we're both learning some more about football. Definitely I am in my spare time. Teach me about stunts. Now, what
Mm-hmm.
were the Bears offensive line not really able to do?
They weren't dealing with the stunts well. I mean, what would happen is probably you'd have one of your defensive tackles hit in and push his guard over into the center. So the center picks up that guy, and you have maybe the left guard over here. He's trying to come down and block his defensive tackle. Very simple. The defensive tackle just going to wrap around here. And then you have 3 offensive linemen blocking 1 defensive tackle. I think I saw that probably like 6 times where an unguarded defensive tackle is just sprinting down Caleb Williams. I mean, It's
Mm-hmm.
like, what are you going to do? You have to communicate on those stunts. You have to disengage your guy, you need to maybe wrap around. I don't know. You need to get Caleb moving in the pocket. It just seems like they just weren't switching up their game plan. They were expecting just full blitz every single time. I mean, and then when it wasn't blitz, it's like, well, they didn't know. They just really didn't know what was going on.
Right. And I talked about the Texans, still performing well. C.J. Stroud, 23 for 36, 260 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown was a Nico Collins, who probably had a bit of a career game, 8 catches, 135 yards in that tug. Caleb Williams finishes 23 for 37, 174 yards and two interceptions, and was actually finished as the Bears' leading rusher with 5 carries for 44 yards. While they can't pass block, the offensive line for the Bears can't really run block because they can't really get DeAndre Swift going, who I was pretty high on going into the season.
Yeah, he just doesn't really seem like the same DeAndre Swift we've seen. Maybe injuries or whatnot. He's getting. I mean, I feel like he isn't really getting that old.
Mm-hmm. No, he was only drafted a couple years ago. He's probably only like 26 or 27.
That's what I was going to guess. 25.
Wow.
But he's playing like a 32-year-old, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think they need to design more. I was saying they should just, what was going on if the Texans are blitzing a lot and they're getting to the quarterback a lot, run some screens.
Slip screen, yep.
Yeah, I mean, DeAndre Swift is so slippery. It's like he would be really good in screens. I don't think I saw them run a single screen the whole game. It's like you need to adjust.
Which is weird because if you remember, they were using that a lot last year. That was like almost they were using slip screens a ton, and Bears fans are getting tired of that. Honestly, revert back to that when you got a quarterback that can make the throw, and you have a better running back there.
Yeah, I mean, you have the weapons, and they don't really use them.
Nope, except they're gonna design. I saw this is probably one of the worst play calls I saw. It was someone on TikTok was showing me. It was like they stacked on the left side, and it was a couple receivers, and then their backup tight end. What's his name?
Gerald
Everett, and it was a designed screen for their backup tight end. Not even Cole Kmet getting design, and it was like 2 yards maybe. Like design plays that are going to help you. Like it just, I don't know.
Yeah, but and then I feel like Caleb Williams can't play to his strengths with the way that the offense is set up. Offensive line, scheme, whatever. He's a creative player, kind of like Mahomes, but it seems like every single game he's playing is like the Chiefs-Bucks Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. And while the Texans offense still looked pretty solid, they much also like the Bears only scored 3 points in that second half.
And Joe Mixon actually went down.
Yep, that was scary, but he came back in, so thankfully. And
he didn't practice again today, so
okay. Well,
there's a good chance we're moving. There's a good chance they're moving to him. He technically returned to the game, but I don't think he took another snap.
He did. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure he did. Anyway, looks like I'm going to have to adjust on fantasy.
I took his over yards, and he didn't record another probably 5 or more yards the entire game after.
Well, I might have to be looking for a replacement on fantasy, but we'll get to your last best performance, which is in this game. Like I was saying, the Texans performed well offensively, but they only scored 1 touchdown in that game, but their other points came from your boy.
I mean, Kyami Fairbairn.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I'm saying that right.
Might be Fairbairn.
I mean, he's just the best player in the league currently, is he not?
4 field goals. He went 4 for 4 with 3 50-plus yard field goals.
And I believe, didn't he nail a 59-yarder too?
Or what? He had.
Yeah.
59.
He had a 59 in a game. He's still 100% on the year for field goals and extra points. I mean, yeah, 4 for 4. His average field goal length is 54 yards. And for the season, I mean, how many? Gosh, I need to see this. So he kicked He's kicked 6 50-yard field goals so far, 3 in each game. All right?
Mm-hmm.
He's only kicked 1 that was under 50 yards.
And that was in that game yesterday or this week.
No, I believe that was in, yeah.
He had a 47-yarder, I want to say.
Yeah, and it was almost 50 yards. Can you believe that? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about the 50-yarder being the new minimum. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's like setting the way. I mean, he's fantasy wise. I mean, I wish I drafted him over Patrick Mahomes. Or I don't have Patrick Mahomes, but I would have wished I had him over Patrick Mahomes.
Um, that's the end of that one. We'll get to my worst performance, and I don't want to, I don't want to dog on him too much. That's why it's kind of a combo one here. So, moving over to the last game, we'll talk about the Packers and the Colts. Packers playing with Malik Willis, and not only can the Colts not, they keep the Packers to 16 points, even though they rush for like over 200 yards, and Malik Willis played admirable. But they also don't know how to call a game apparently, because Jonathan Taylor was playing well, and he had 12 he finished with 12 carries for 103 yards, and instead rely on Anthony Richardson to throw the ball 34 times. He throws 3 picks, only 200 yards. So I have a combo: Anthony Richardson and their offensive coordinator, which is, I had to look his name up, and it's crazy, Jim Bob Cooter.
Love it.
Run the ball. Run the ball. I get it. You want AR to be, play his game, but he keeps forcing these throws and throwing interceptions. And I get, he hasn't played a lot of football in the last couple of years. He was injured last year, but this was a very winnable game for the Colts, who, they give up all those yards on offense on the ground, but they only give up 16 points. You have to score one more touchdown to beat them, and they can't do it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the average for what we see from Anthony Richardson, which I love. He's a gunslinger. He's like Brett Favre. He's like Baker Mayfield on the Browns. He's like Jameis Winston on the Bucks. I mean, he hucks the ball. I mean, he has probably the best arm in the league.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not a crazy thing to say. And sometimes I think the game plan relies a little bit too much on him making crazy plays, and those are very high risk, very high reward.
Yep. And they have the receivers to do it, but also just, you have Jonathan Taylor, who's playing a really solid game, and you only give him 12 carries, and again, just a very winnable game. They actually were they were shut out in that first half. In the first half, they were down 10-0. They put those 10 points together. So, I mean, I don't know how confident I am in the Colts if they're just going to keep having Rich. I get it. He's got a big arm, but you got to use it wisely and use your weapon, Jonathan Taylor, wisely, who is still, I think, one of the better backs in the league.
Yeah, I think I feel like this is a team that's probably going to be like 9 wins this year.
I wouldn't even give them that. They're already behind that schedule. 0-2.
Well, they'll pick up some wins here and there. I feel like there's a lot of season left.
If they win 9 games, that means they're going to be going 9-6 through their for the rest of the season.
Which isn't that
tough
crazy?
AFC South. A tough AFC South, I want to say. Never mind.
3 wins over the Jags. They get
Excuse me.
3 wins over the Titans.
Excuse me. It's not a tough AFC South because the Texans are the only team that's 2-0. Everyone else is 0-2.
Well, listen to their upcoming schedule here.
Okay.
Bears, Steelers, Jags, Titans.
Okay, maybe I get my mind changed after this, but those aren't good wins.
They have a 5-game stretch where they could honestly win 5 games if Tua doesn't come back in that Dolphins game.
I don't think like I said, I don't think those are good wins, but wins are wins.
They also play the Broncos and the Giants this year as well, and the Patriots.
We talk about wins. We got I counted it up. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait, 1, 2, 3.
counts.
9 teams that are 2-0.
Okay.
We can rank them real quick if you want, and then preview tonight's game.
Yeah.
Let's do a combo list on this. Let's see if we can agree.
Okay. The number one team.
Number one team. What are you thinking? I'm between two.
Hopefully, you're between the Bills and the Chiefs.
I put the Texans in there as well. I'm between those three. I can knock that. What do you think? Chiefs or Bills?
I think Chiefs are the number one team just because they're coming off. They just won an AFC Championship game against the Bengals this week. So
yeah. I mean, probably both teams not playing at their best because it is week 2, but I agree. All right, and then Bills at 2?
Yep, and I think the Texans are also looking really good.
Okay.
And then from there, I would honestly say the Saints are the next highest.
I would agree just for now. Saints, and then are we good with putting Bucks?
I like that. And then the Vikings. So
right.
almost
we agree on this. This is, our viewers are going to think, they don't see these guys agree on stuff too much, but we're flying through this. We're agreeing on a lot of this.
Yeah, and I think you can switch around the order, but I think there's like a clear tier 1 and tier 2 team where it's like tier 1 is Chiefs, Bills, Texans so far for the 2-0 teams. I honestly do think there's some 1-1 teams and honestly 0-2 teams that are probably better than some of these undefeated teams.
Right, but
I would say the Ravens are better than the Seahawks. That's not a crazy take.
Like the okay, and then I want to do Chargers,
Seahawks, Steelers.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, because that Seahawks defense, we didn't talk about their game because I don't really think it's that noteworthy, but their defense is looking really solid with the Ravens defensive coordinator, now their head coach. Is it Mike McDonald? I could be wrong there.
I tend not to pay attention to the Seahawks that much.
Mike McDonald is their head coach. He was the defense coordinator last year for the Ravens.
Yeah. And I mean, the Steelers are still just like, I think Steelers will do this. They'll win games early on, and you're starting to think like, are they actually good? And then they're going to hit a point in the season where you're like, oh, this team's just terrible. Mike Tomlin is again fighting for his 500 season, and he's probably going to get it, and they're going to miss the playoffs.
I probably agree with you there. I don't really know if I even want to see them in the playoffs. I want to see the best teams in the playoffs, especially on the AFC side with all the teams that they got. Like, I would want to see the Jets over them. If I, in a perfect world for the playoffs, I would want to see like Bills, Chiefs. There can be 7 teams. Yes, 7 teams. Chiefs, Bills, Jets, Texans, Chargers, Ravens, Bengals.
Browns.
It was between the Browns and the Bengals, but I'd rather see the Bengals. Okay, that's tough. We'll get into that more as the season goes on, playoff predictions. But we could predict this game. This will be our last topic for Thursday night. Also, well, I guess quick recap for ranking the 2-0 teams. We got Chiefs, Bills, Texans, Saints, Bucks, Vikings, Chargers, Seahawks, Steelers.
Where that the 3 MVP candidates are in that middle tier.
Yeah, because you're still kind of
need to prove more.
Exactly.
Still improving.
Speaking of a team that's still improving, I think, kind of getting into the swing of things, is the Jets going up against the Patriots, who I think are just, they're 1-1 now. I think they're probably just going to be okay. At this point, I'm just waiting to see what Drake May looks like. But Aaron Rodgers against Jacoby Brissett. What are you thinking for this one, man?
Well, I think this should be the easiest win the Jets have this season.
I would agree.
I
Until the
mean,
next time they play the Patriots, of course.
yeah, I think the Patriots are honestly competing well with teams.
Yep.
But I mean, yeah, they beat the Bengals. They almost beat the Seahawks, right? So, I mean, they're surprisingly good, but I think they still have Jacoby Brissett at the helm. They still have a new coach. They still have this and that.
Hmm.
Ramondre Stevenson has looked pretty good.
Yep.
But outside of that, their offense hasn't looked that great.
Hmm.
So,
And I think even with a Jets defense that is out for Jermaine Johnson and CJ Mosley, probably questionable for this game.
I think
I
they
can
still have
say
a really good
he's
defense
questionable.
besides that.
Yeah, of course. With especially with Will McDonald, who balled out last week, got 3 sacks. Great to see a Cyclone, a former Cyclone, do that.
Yeah, keeping his job.
But with the Patriots, I'm surprised. I will say there's one person that you're definitely watching out there.
Hunter Henry.
Not not something that you can make bacon out of. Jalen Pork,
Jalen Polk.
Polk. Never mind.
I was like,
Blunder.
Caleb Bacon? I signed him? No.
uh,
I think he's a rookie, right? Jalen Polk.
he caught a touchdown last week.
He did. I think they're starting to use him a bit more. In the preseason he looked really good. I think once he has a good connection with Drake May. So I think
Hmm.
once Drake May takes the helm, and I say once, I don't say like if, because at some point they're going to bench Jacoby Brissett. At some
Do you think
point they're
that
going to stop winning games.
probably happen at some point this season?
Yeah, it's looking like it might be later than sooner, just because they're winning games with Jacoby Brissett. So it's like
Hmm.
why start Drake May? But
Right.
I do think Drake May is more talented. He has more potential, and I think they have a really young roster, and I I do see a lot of success for them in the future
Mm.
if they
I would
can get stuff going.
I would agree. I'm going to take the Jets on this one. Obviously, I am looking forward to this just because I know it's only been a couple days, but kind of missing football. Really looking forward to this game and seeing Aaron Rodgers probably get
Mm-hmm.
better. Of course, Brees Hall, Alan Lazard, Braylon Allen looked great last week as well. So I think the Jets are, people are kind of forgetting they're sneakily becoming a great offense in this league. Patriots think their defense is kind of gonna get exposed. They've been playing all right. They got exposed on a couple big plays from the Seahawks last week. But I'm also looking forward to seeing Ramondre Stevenson run because he's a dog. So
Yeah, good thing you mentioned Braylon Allen because I did pick him up on fantasy just in
mhm.
case Kenneth Walker's out, but he does play tonight, doesn't he? That's tough.
And do you want to give real quick the parlay that you gave me, which I tailed with you?
Yeah. If anybody wants free money, we were talking about
This is actually a pretty good parlay, if I do say so. I think it's pretty likely.
we're talking
Isaiah.
about like the yeah, Isaiah likely. We were talking about the TikTokers that are always like, you would be dumb if you didn't tail this parlay. I mean, it's free money. We went 5 for 5 last week, and they're like 25 parlays. They hit one of them. They're down
Right.
500, and they're like, you should tail this with us. But
Actually, a good one from Mr. Royston today.
yeah, I sat down for a good 3 4 hours building this 4 leg. But it's again for those of you that need reminded, I have to use Prize Picks here. That's okay. I
It's
like
okay.
it.
It's honestly better because there has been some times where my props hit and my money line doesn't. So
Yeah. Where I was a spread merchant, spread fiend. Spread fiend? That seems
the,
weird.
the spread for this one is 6.
Jets
Wow. Wow.
minus, well, I was going to say 4.5.
+6 for the Patriots. I might. I don't know about that. Okay, you go. You go.
Okay. So 4 leg. I got the 2 Patriots are Jacoby Brissett over, so 1 interception or more.
Mhm.
And Ramondre Stevenson higher than 65.5 rushing yards, which I believe he's hit. in his first 2 games, I want to say.
Oh, for sure. He has 201 total yards.
And the Patriots, their main game plan is to run it through Ramondre Stevenson just because they don't have a lot of talent in the air. I think they're going to be scared to throw it a bunch with Sauce Gardner back there. And without Jermaine Johnson, I mean, and CJ Mosley. If he doesn't play, there's a good chance that, the Jets can't stop the run.
So Ramondre Stevenson has hit 66.5 total or rushing yards in 5 of his last 6 games, tailing back to last year. So pretty confident in that as well.
And then I have Breece Hall over receiving yards. It's at 27.5. And I believe he's hit that in like 9 of his last 12 games or something.
They use him a lot in the passing game, which is surprising because he wasn't really used that much at Iowa State in the pass game, I want to say. But
he was running receiver routes last week.
Yeah, like this year at least, he's had 39 in week 1, 52 in week 2. And then last year, I'll just look back there. In his last 3 games, 12, 42, 96. So, 4 of his last 5 games.
Yeah. And then I have Aaron Rodgers 2 passing touchdowns or more.
Which I think,
I think he'll probably throw one to Breece Hall. And I think it's about time that Garrett Wilson gets in the end zone. I think we'll see that. This could easily be a game that Aaron Rodgers has 3 passing touchdowns in. But I'm not going that crazy yet. I think they score a couple early on. I think the Patriots probably score a field goal and a touchdown to keep up.
And then they just run the clock out.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, that's all I got, buddy.
Me too. I mean, we're just gonna have to wait and see. I mean, it's Thursday. It's football.
We say this every week, but we really should get that another episode out for you guys on Monday or Tuesday, so we can not make these 2 hours. But of course, we'll work around our schedules. But thank you guys again. We'll see you guys next week. Next time, we're gonna talk more football here on Trench Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. See you guys next time.